All right, for those that are just coming into this Zoom webinar, we are starting a little bit early, just simply to give folks a chance to get logged in, get connected with the Spanish interpretation channel. We will be flashing some instructions on screen momentarily in terms of how to connect with interpretation. So go ahead and get familiar with your Zoom controls, and we will officially start in about 3 to 4 minutes. So just stay tuned. Like I said, go ahead and get familiar with your Q&A function with the interpretation, and we'll get started here in about 3 to 4 minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Instructions for accessing interpretation through Zoom. 1. Click Interpretation. 2. Choose a language. 3. Click Mute Original Audio.
Instrucciones para acceder a la interpretación en español a través de Zoom. Haga clic en la palabra Interpretación. Escoja su idioma. Haga clic en la palabra Mute Original Audio.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. It is November 20th, 2024, and this is our third virtual town hall as it relates to the wastewater incident at Bolinas Beach. And I especially want to extend a special thank you not only to our panelists, our interpretive support, our tech team, but also those that tuned in this evening, especially on such a blustery day. I hope everyone is staying dry and staying safe out there. All right, so what we're going to do this evening, just as a quick overview, is I will introduce our panelists. We will have some brief opening remarks from them, just providing an update in terms of what we know is happening. And then, as we have done before, we will entertain your questions that you have. So any questions you have once the presentation has been given, you can insert those questions using the Q&A function on the base of your Zoom panel if you are joining us online. So just click that Q&A function and submit your question, and then we'll be curating those and asking those questions through the evening. So with that, I'm going to start by introducing our panelists. First, we have District 4 Supervisor and President of the Board of Supervisors, Dennis Rodoni. We have our Public Health Officer, Dr. Lisa Santora from Marin Health and Human Services. We have the Director of our Community Development Agency, Sarah Jones. And we also have the Assistant Director of the Community Development Agency, Chris Choo. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our panelists for some opening remarks. And Supervisor Rodoni, I know last time you welcomed everyone. I don't know if you'd like to kick us off, and then maybe we'll turn it over to Dr. Santora to step in from there.
Yeah, I would like to just welcome everyone again. Thank you for attending to get an update this evening. I also want to thank the community for hosting us last Friday. We ended up having lunch at Smiley's and touring the beach with many local residents who had great insight into what's going on. And we really appreciated that local knowledge and want to thank them for their interest and them engaging us. So thanks to the community.
That's great. Thank you, Supervisor Rodoni. Dr. Santora, would you like to go ahead and jump in?
I want to thank Supervisor Rodoni for also hosting us, and again, also to our friends at Smiley Saloon. It was a great lunch there, and I will be back out there again soon. I started my day earlier in Bolinas at the Bolinas Lagoon Advisory Council, which was another amazing experience. Got to meet Ed Huber, who was well known to all of you and a lifelong protector of our ocean, and just reinforced to me at that meeting just the talented community we have and the dedicated community that we have in Bolinas. And again, just restating our commitment to working together with the community to navigate a very complex challenge ahead of us. And it's a challenge much bigger than even what brought us here. The community's been working together for decades to address climate change and the environmental impacts of humans coexisting with wildlife for many moons in Bolinas. And again, just entering this conversation with humility and just a deep gratitude for all of the community expertise that was shared on Friday.
I muted myself. With that, Chris or Sarah, anything that you would like to add?
I'll just add my appreciation as well. Friday's tour was really interesting, really enlightening, and had a good time connecting with people, and just so appreciated the local knowledge and really people spending their time on this purely to support their community. It was a big deal.
It was. And I tagged along, and I just want to echo everything that's been shared. It was really great to talk to more of the community members to really understand some of the uniqueness of the beach and its, elements, which I think we'll talk about in a minute, but also hearing from some of the business owners as well. So that was really helpful. So with that, why don't we turn it over into a bit of a status update? I don't know who's taking the lead on this one, but in terms of kind of what is the latest status with regard to monitoring the situation at the beach and, current actions that might be taking place and potential next steps.
I can go, and then I'll have Chris jump in to provide additional framing. So it was raining outside, but our partnership with the Regional Water Board continued through the rain, and they were on site today to continue testing. As we've described previously, we're in the discovery phase to really understand what literally the nature of the contamination, the fecal contamination that was identified earlier in September. And one part of that is completing genetic testing to determine if there's any human sources at the site where visible sewage was seen. So that is our next step. What's going to follow is going to take longer than we always want. It's going to take probably a couple of weeks for those results to come back. At the same time, last week, we had meetings with the Regional Water Board and California Department of Public Health, as we discussed at our last town hall, and are now seeking additional guidance from the state. So they have escalated our request for technical assistance and legal interpretation and guidance as it relates to health and safety code to the state water board, and also up the chain at the California Department of Public Health. And what we are anticipating is that within the next couple of weeks, we'll have both guidance from the state returning, as well as the results from the testing that was completed today, and to bring those results back to our policy group at the county, which includes our county council, again, to review what are the implications of what the findings, and then what would be the proposed next steps as we navigate this complex situation. Chris, any other points to add?
No, I don't think I have anything to add to that.
So I think just the kind of close the status update is that we understand we're working with a very fragile coastal ecosystem. It was a really great opportunity to be on foot and touring the different parts of Bolinas. One thing that we want to reinforce is that there's no intention to conflate what was the recreational water testing that was kind of done at the mouth of the lagoon. That's where it's always been done, probably out of convenience in some ways, and are impacted by the lagoon wildlife itself. We know we have a population of harbor seals out there that can impact the results, which is very distinct from where the point of visible sewage that was seen on a site inspection and where testing is being completed. So we really want to reinforce that there's no intention to conflate those two locations, although they're interconnected. We see them as two distinct findings. So if a positive test is seen at the recreational water testing, which has ended at this point, it's probably more likely to the dynamics of the tides and the wildlife that are in the lagoon itself than anything that we are currently assessing at the cliffside. So just wanted to reinforce that. Just also to know that we really see that it's a diverse wildlife. We know there's deer and coyotes, and I mentioned the seals that could be impacting our findings and impacting the habitat. We also know that we're not just humans and are trying to address human health and protect human health. We also are working in critical habitats for marine life. So again, we're really dealing with a very delicate environment, and that's why we are here. We know that this delicate environment is vulnerable to various threats, pollution, climate change like we're seeing, and erosion, and also just human disturbances. So that is one of the concerns, and one of the hypotheses that we're working is potential impact of human disturbances or septic system integrity on this ecosystem, and making sure that any potential fecal contamination does not harm human health. Again, we're keenly aware, and it was visible while we're walking, that it's not just human sources, it's wildlife sources, and wildlife is beautiful out there and is abundant. But those mammals also are contributors to potential fecal contamination. So just really underscoring that we understand the complexity of this, not as deeply as the community scientists and researchers and experts that are out there. We know that you live every day in that environment and are very deferential to that, but we know that we have a deep understanding of the interconnectedness and the complexity of the landscape that we're assessing. And again, just enter into this discovery phase very humble, and just trying to have a very measured approach to guide our decision making. I think that's all I have to state, and I don't know if we have any other rounding comments before we open it up to questions from the group.
And I will just pop in and say, if you do have a burning question, I've seen a couple come in so far. Remember that you're able to submit questions for any of our panelists using the Q&A function at the base of your Zoom browser. If you're using a different Zoom connection, I'm not sure where it's located, but look for that Q&A button and go ahead and enter your question, and we'll make sure we get it answered. So if there are no other opening comments from our panelists, we'll go ahead and dive into our first few questions that have come in. Taking a keen interest in contamination areas on the beach, or on the bluff, I should say. The first question is, where exactly on the beach is the contamination located? I know we've talked a little bit about this in a past town hall, but if there's a way, based on your maybe most recent tour, that either Supervisor Rodoni or Sarah or Lisa, you'd like to sort of categorize it in case there's somebody that's watching this that has not actually been to the beach to see it.
So I'm going to pass it off quickly to Chris, but I know there was a site that was inspected originally. This was part of a regular process, and that at that point of inspection, it was identified that there is visible that we were not in person, but we saw video of what was visible sewage due to discoloration, an ammonia smell that then tested positive on the ammonia strip, and then additional testing at that point confirmed fecal contamination of unknown source. And so that was the initial trigger. I don't have the GPS location, the geolocation of that. I know that then there was a walk along on the beach that at that point showed other points where we, by video, saw riverlets of streams that was concerned for, again, wastewater runoff from the bluff or from the cliffside. When we were on site on Friday, we did not, it was the same type of riverlets that we saw by video from, it was, I guess, early in September. I think it might have been September, the video might have been from September 4th. That was not visible when we did our walkabout. The cliffs were much drier when we were there, and we did not see that same visible runoff that was seen by video on September 4th.
I can just add in as far as where it's located. Everything is west of Brighton Avenue. And if you turn to the right on the beach on Brighton, you need to go down probably about 100 yards down before the first location of some sea beach is evident. And again, it's mostly indicated in a white coloring on the bluff that you can see something going on. We're not sure what it is.
All right, thank you, Supervisor. And then we have another question with regard to the contamination, and I don't know if this is, I'm guessing, for the commenter, this might be with the changing of conditions, that sort of thing. What is the current flow rate of contamination at the site? Do we have any updated numbers on that?
On Friday, we did not take measurements. I know some of the local residents have done their own community-based research and have done and did a flow study, and it was at significantly lower rates than what we estimated, and that's consistent with what we visualized. Again, there was a very stark difference between the runoff of the water and the volume that we saw at multiple sites by video. Again, that was by video and not an in-person than what we saw, and then also what was reported by community scientists who also reported visualizing flow, but not at the same rate that was seen earlier in September.
Okay, thank you.
And now it's raining, so now we have another factor that will potentially impact any what would be seen as runoffs contributing. So we had an amazing Dr. Gailey, hydrogeologist, who was leading the tour on his birthday. Thank you, Rob. Who, again, there's different types of runoff. So you'll have kind of groundwater runoff through the cliffs, and you'll kind of have also surface runoff, which we'll probably see after rain. So again, just really understanding the dynamic nature of this fragile cliffside.
Yeah, and on the flow rate question, we have over the last couple months at these various times seen some different forms of seepage activity, whatever you best want to call it, on the cliffs. So some of the areas that that had led to looking into it further are not flowing. It's really, moisture, discoloration, the white crystallization, some other evidence that's not actually flowing liquid.
Got it. So will there, what would it, if, I know it's raining right now, so it's probably not the best time to go out there and try to track all that. Is there, what kind of interest is there in monitoring that rate of flow once we get past kind of the rain and that sort of thing? And, in terms of any updated estimates as it relates to I don't know, does that impact the testing that goes on? Does that impact kind of how the regional water board and Lisa, you mentioned that California Department of Public Health is now involved. Does that impact that at all? Or the fact that we have anything on the bluff is what matters?
I think from our conversation, some of it depends on the legal interpretation of visible sewage. That's what we are, what we're seeking technical assistance from the state. When we were on site, there was changes, right? We saw, white matter that is seen as changes that are salts that were deposited, different than, foul smelling, discolored seepage that we saw by video and photos previously. And so again, trying to get a clear definition and guidance from the state to understand what is that definition, and then what is the legal responsibilities of a health officer as it relates to beach closures when visible sewage. What we heard on the phone call with the state was that the state does not distinguish between human and animal fecal contamination as it relates to visible sewage. And that's, again, a point that we're really attempting to navigate. Again, understanding, as I described earlier, there's lots of different types of mammals that are residents of Bolinas, not just humans, and that also contribute to fecal contamination. And so really trying to get clarity on the interpretation of the law, so we can navigate towards that next step with a goal of reopening. There is a goal of reopening the beach. We just don't have a path, a clear path forward to that at this point, and why we continue to be in this discovery phase, which I appreciate is much longer than people would have hoped it to be, but to have the discovery phase so we can make an informed decision and provide, again, really work towards ensuring that we're protecting the health of our community.
Certainly.
And we saw it, I mean, that's part of it. We saw the community interacting with environment that we know has fecal contamination. And again, that does pose, we've been fortunate. There haven't been known illnesses, known severe illnesses. We've heard anecdotally of people who have been sick after surfing or swimming, which is not uncommon anywhere, especially after storms. So would not recommend anyone surfing. Although I'm sure there's people that will be out there bright and early tomorrow, but after storms, that's when there's the highest level of runoff and potential for fecal contamination entering into the water. So would not recommend anyone surfing, especially with the beach closure that's in place. But that's what we're really trying to navigate. We know there's anecdotal illnesses related to E. coli in our waters, and we that's our role, is protecting the health and safety of the community.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Maybe as a panel, or I don't know if this is best for Lisa or Chris or Sarah, but so Lisa, earlier you mentioned that the Regional Water Board was out there today collecting more samples, which is great. How might, and if you said this and I missed it, I'm sorry, but maybe you can elaborate a bit more. How might these samples that they collected and the tests that are going to be run differ from what was done earlier? Are they taking a deeper dive? Are they running different tests? How does this new round of testing factor in?
I can attempt to answer that question. Sorry, I have a cough, so I'm on a cough drop, and hopefully I won't make myself to cough. But the tests that were done back in September were quick tests to just kind of verify what was visually seen as a potential problem. That was followed up with some quick lab tests for just the water quality, and that's where we got that initial finding of coliform, E. coli, and enterococcus. And then in October, the regional board and our staff went out to test using using water samples, and those were the tests that last month we reported back. We did not detect any human genetic markers. Those tests did require larger volumes of sample, and so they were kind of selectively, those samples were collected from areas that had kind of flowing waters, and some of those flowing waters were cleaner. We didn't have the same, smells and visual cues that signaled maybe, problematic issues, but we needed that volume of sample. And so the samples that were collected today are sediment samples. And again, we're trying to just narrow down in that discovery phase whether or not there are any human genetic markers in the contamination. So again, for the beach closure, there's just the need to kind of understand if there's any contamination at all in terms of understanding, whether or not this is tied at all to septics, and whether or not it's tied to, to the activity on the bluff. Finding out whether or not there are those human genetic markers is helpful. So today's tests, we're collecting sediment, and that will give us a better indication. And so again, in a few weeks, probably in mid-December sometime, we should hopefully have those results back.
Great, thank you, Chris. We have a question that's come in about signs. The person asked, I've not seen any signs or notice of contamination or closure. Are there any? Is the closure being enforced in any way? I will jump in because this is a personal beef of mine. We've tried. We've actually had some well-meaning patrons send us pictures of signs in trash cans. So we're trying to post the signs for whatever reason, whether it's weather or other means, they get removed. And also along the area where the seepage has been observed, that's a difficult place to actually post signage during, high tides and that sort of thing. So we are in the process of creating more or producing more signs that we can take out there and post, and we'll try to post in a way that might be a little more, I don't want to say permanent, but in a little more way that cannot just easily be ripped down and or whatever happens. I'm not going to assume that people are ripping them down. But I don't know if the panel wishes to add anything on the signage or enforcement question.
I also saw no signs on our trip and our walkabout. But I think that the dynamic nature that you describe, some may have been signs may have been lifted, but we do know some signs were taken off with the high tides, and actually that exemplifies the dynamic environment that we're concerned about, where we know there's fecal contaminated runoff that comes off a cliffside. The tide goes up and then collects, gathers runoff, and then comes back out. That creates that beach, that walkable space where people can play on. And that's the dynamic challenge ahead of us, right? Where we don't have this long beach runway where we have a great distance between any fecal contamination source and the beach itself. And then there's tide pools that are also there that create this shallow water that again could have fecal contamination that can get concentrated. So again, that's the signs itself kind of reflect the dynamic nature of the landscape that we're trying to navigate, and again provide information to the community to make informed decisions about how they engage. There is not active enforcement. We aim for voluntary adherence to our signage, and thank you, Lainey, for you and your team's efforts to post those signs again. And again, just really want the community to be aware that there's it's an area of known fecal contamination, and so there may be harmful bacteria that's present on that beachfront.
All right, thank you for that. How about one thing that I think might be important to touch on would be the business component of this, and what conversations might be happening with regard to potential support for businesses and that sort of thing. There's a member of our team who wasn't able to be here this evening, but Sarah, perhaps you can speak a little bit more to that aspect.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lainey. And I might say some things, and then I might put the supervisor on the spot if he wants to add on this front. But we have heard some really important feedback from the community about how this is affecting community, how the closure of the beach and the fact that it had, kind of hit the news and gotten widely publicized, how that might be impacting the community. And so that put onto our radar screen that in addition to the technical side of this, we also need to be putting effort into further communications to refine that understanding that it's not a full closure of the beach, it's partial closure, and kind of getting the message out there about the Bolinas community and the businesses, and that there are good opportunities there. So we brought in the county's in addition to already having good communications, great communications people as part of this team. We also brought in the county's economic vitality coordinator, Raisa De La Rosa. She was part of the group that was out there on Friday. She spent a bunch of time in town earlier in the day to really connect with business owners and purchase a few goodies also, but mostly there not to shop, but to really connect and start to build our strategy for how we might be working with businesses there. So that's still in its beginning stage, but I did want to make sure that people knew and heard that this is now part of our overall response. And then Dennis, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on that.
I just would add that I think first and foremost, we have a common goal amongst us to hopefully get some recreational water testing that could give us some better information and perhaps move to an advisory on the beach, which we think could be much more flexible when it comes to people making their own choice about what they're going to do on the beach and whether they're going to go to the beach at all. I think we all also understand that early on, some of our messaging probably could have been better, and certainly our communication with the business community could have been better. First and foremost, we understand there's been some impact to businesses, and that we're starting to understand that a little better. But first and foremost, we really want to get hopefully the recreational water to an advisory, which we use in many other locations throughout the county, where the visitor can make their own choice with that advisory, whether they go near the water, go into water, and what they do. And I think that's a personal goal of mine, and I know it's a goal of this group. Sort of independent of what's going on in the bluff, we need to know about that too. But we think some of the business impacts could be mitigated by having an advisory on the beach for the near future until we figure out what the more testing will bring us. So hopefully that's happening. And I don't know if Lisa wants to comment about, is there ways that we could push the state along a little quicker to make some of these decisions that would help us move to that goal?
I don't know. We'll keep trying to push the state. Really fortunate to have, we met with county council today, again, trying to be prepared for whichever guidance the state gives us to then understand what is our local discretion and jurisdiction. So that's, we did meet with county council today, again, just to prepare for when we do receive the results from the test, to have understand the options before us, so that we can then bring back our recommendations. But we basically would be bringing back our recommendations first from staff back to our policy group to again make an informed decision. So and that being said, again, we were very measured in the communication approach. We and unfortunately what we've seen it nationwide and globally is sometimes things catch like fire just because of the dynamic nature, but there is absolute intentionality that we did not have public health updates. We wanted to make sure, trying to balance having information available to the community, and it really has been a community directed communication strategy. It hasn't been externally directed at all. That being said, it was sensationalized, and despite our best efforts to avoid sensationalization, unfortunately, it caught fire in that way. And it was always the intention to have a very hyper-local communication strategy around this, so we could have that space. But we deeply understand that that's not how it, that was not the outcome. And that there was, I knew it when I saw it on Daily Mail, that it got very, very big and got picked up, and that was never the intention. The intention was to create a web page and to create an email access to for residents and visitors to local resources of information. And again, we understand that that's the impact that on the economy that had. So apologies for that. The intention was to be hyper local. Unfortunately, it did reach international awareness. I just admitted I read the Daily Mail.
I think all of us might be guilty of looking at a Daily Mail because they do have very sensational headlines. That is for sure. It's clickbait. It's definition of clickbait. On the topic of communication, I do want to, in case somebody here is newer to this conversation and may not be totally familiar with the resources we do have available. Hopefully I'm sharing the correct screen here. Are you all seeing the web page? Okay, good, thank you. At marincounty.gov/Bolinas-wastewater, you will see the web page that Dr. Santora referenced. This is kind of our ongoing update for the Bolinas community in Greater West Marin in terms of what's happening. And I just want to call out a few helpful resources in case anybody that's viewing this video was not previously familiar. You'll see up here, these buttons get you right to kind of what you might be looking for. So we do have a status update that just about weekly, we try to update it with kind of what's going on as Lisa and Chris so carefully articulated that we are in discovery phase. And so, sometimes these tests take a little while to get results back. So we may not have a lot to report week to week, but we are trying to keep folks updated on what is happening week to week. As many of you know, this is where we also house our information on past town halls. And when we announce future virtual town halls, that information is here. But most importantly, I want to call out this frequently asked questions section. It does get updated periodically as we have a real burning question that a number of members of the public are asking, or we realize we need to clarify something a little differently. And so all of these categories have a number of your most popular questions, including kind of where exactly is the issue at hand here and what is still open and available for people to recreate or utilize or enjoy. And what exactly, influences beach access, and, kind of recognizing that confluence of, is it water or is it the sewage on the beach that Dr. Santora called out, and a number of other things. And then finally, at the top, I want to also call out that there is an ability to subscribe for email updates. And generally, we will send out an email when a new town hall has been announced. And we will utilize this if we have another major update that we want to share with the community right away. And then finally, there's some additional, just for interest about, if you want to learn more about our beach water quality testing program, which has concluded for the calendar year, learn more about water systems, septic systems, those resources are here. All right, well, I think we have, at least from what I've viewed online, I think we have reached the end of the questions that have come in from the audience. So I'll turn it back to the panel. I don't know if there's any closing remarks, although I feel like you've given some really good roundup remarks already. But anything you would like to close out with?
I just want to close out with gratitude again. I have always known what a special place Bolinas is, even before I ever moved to the Bay Area, because of how protected it was. And I think that I use the word protection meaningfully, because I think it was beautiful to see the protectors of the land and the protectors of the ocean and the protectors of the community who we met on Friday, and just reinforces how special and treasured this community is. And it just gives me hope. I know we're navigating a challenging situation together, but on days that feel really dark, the light of this community coming together just really brightened and buoyed me on Friday, and definitely will be returning sooner than I had expected. It was just a great opportunity to reconnect. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo that. We've had just some really incredibly important experiences working with Bolinas and seeing what this community brings over the past couple of years in the Bolinda Vista project and other efforts. And I have been impressed all through this entire situation with just the community spirit and commitment to environment and each other that the residents have brought. I know I've said that before. I actually now named our new kitten Bo in honor of probably my favorite community in Marin County. So we are really here and sticking with this, and totally committed to making finding a solution because this community needs it and deserves it.
Appreciate that, Sarah. We're going to need pictures of little Bo next time.
I can share them.
Anything, not to put you on the spot, but anything Chris or Supervisors or Rodoni you wish to share as we close out? Otherwise,
just thanks for holding the session, and thanks to the community for checking in.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you again to our panelists for being here with us this evening, to our Spanish interpretation team, to our tech team, and for the many attendees that joined us this evening. This is recorded, so it will be posted. If anybody's listening and you have somebody to ask, hey, I missed it, how do I watch it? It will be posted to that webpage we referenced earlier probably in the next 48 hours. Usually we get it up by then. There is also contact information on that webpage. So if you end this meeting and think, I forgot to ask this question, you can reach us there. We're happy to answer your questions as well. We are trying to hold these about monthly. So when we come up with a mutual date, kind of navigating the holiday calendar, we will post that on our informational webpage. We will get that out through that listserv that I referenced, and also recognizing a comment that just came in through the Q&A. We will also make sure that it's posted to Nextdoor, which we have been doing, and get it out in the hearsay. So thank you for that recommendation. All right, with that, everyone, thank you again. Have a good evening, and we look forward to connecting with you again very soon.